In this week's portion Shalach Lecha, the Israelites scout out the land and return 40 days later with a puzzling report. They told Moses the land does indeed flow with milk and honey, and all the people we saw looked like giants, and we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked that way to them. And this we know is a matter of perception. Because they were overwhelmed by the task ahead of them, they felt small and weak and assumed that others saw them in the same way. Two tribal leaders, Caleb and Joshua, refused to be dismayed or deterred by the challenges ahead of them and framed the scouts' report by responding with hope and plans to move ahead step by step. Hope, vision, confidence. That sums up Evan Wolfson, our guest speaker this Shabbat, founder and president of the organization Freedom to Marry, who is the Joshua and Caleb of our generation. He will not be deterred. In his 1983 Harvard Law School thesis, he created a blueprint, a roadmap for same-sex couples' freedom to marry, which 32 years later culminated in the Supreme Court's landmark Obergefell decision. As he has written, marriage matters because affirming equality under the law has brought joy, dignity, security, and connectedness to millions of people. It creates equality under the law, fulfills America's promise of liberty, dignity, equality, and freedom for all, regardless of sexual orientation. Freedom to marry is a victory for human rights here and abroad, and it is a template for how to achieve change. Evan Wolfson earned a BA in history from Yale, served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Togo, West Africa, and graduated from Harvard Law School. Wolfson has taught law and social change as a distinguished visitor from practice at Georgetown Law Center and as a distinguished practitioner in grand strategy at Yale University. He serves as senior counsel at Denton's and directs a team of Freedom to Marry alumni and experts coaching human rights efforts worldwide under the banner of Freedom to Marry Global. Among his many accolades, in 1992, he was appointed by Governor Mario Cuomo to the New York State Task Force on Sexual Harassment. In 2000, he represented Eagle Scout James Dale before the Supreme Court when he was expelled from the Boy Scouts of America. The successful outcome of that case ultimately led to the Boy Scouts' reversal of their discriminatory national policy. Evan Wolfson was presented the Barnard Medal of Distinction alongside President Barack Obama in 2012. The National Law Journal named Wolfson one of the 100 most influential attorneys in America, and he has acquired countless other honors, all pointing to his brilliant and consistent work to ensure equality for all, on a policy level and an individual one as well. Wolfson has championed gay and lesbian military personnel fighting for the freedom to serve, gay parents wishing to adopt children and preserve their visitation rights, a person with AIDS seeking life-saving medical treatment which was refused to him by his insurer, among others. author of Why Marriage Matters, America, Equality, and Gay People's Right to Marry, Evan Wolfson has become known as the godfather of gay marriage by creating an ongoing global marriage equality movement. Please join me now in welcoming a scholar whose work has transformed our world with knowledge and through love.
Well, thank you very much, rabbis. It's an honor to be brought to a podium, being even spoken of in the same phrasing as Caleb and Joshua. And of course, a special honor to be sung on with Over the Rainbow. So thank you. I feel very welcome. 2 weeks ago, I was back home in Pittsburgh to attend my 50th high school reunion. I had contemplated wearing a t-shirt emblazoned with a slogan I saw online. It said, "It's weird being the same age as all these old people." I elected not to do that. The reunion was wonderful, both moving and interesting. There were the handful of friends I've stayed in pretty good contact with, and then there were the people I had seen at most once or twice, if at all, over decades. I found that with the people I had liked, being with them again brought a rush of feelings warm and deeply connected to the me I was then. The names were evocative, their voices recognizable, the spark of affection strong. I was not out in high school 50 years ago, and almost all of my friends and acquaintances then and at the reunion are not gay. And yet, throughout the evening, over and over, again and again, classmates and spouses came over to thank me for my work and to share stories of what winning the freedom to marry had meant to their family members, their friends, and occasionally themselves. One acquaintance commented that having gay friends and being comfortable with and even proud of the progress for gay and transgender people is all now so normal, so easy, so almost taken for granted. That transformation beyond the win is a testament to what we achieved. This meta-observation from a non-gay person, enthusiastic about the change and about the power of believing in and working for change, particularly struck me. I've long believed that what people think they think or think they will think is not the limit of what they can come to think if you change their realities and help them rise. That hopeful truth has been at the heart of my activism. And that brings us to the scary and fraught moment in which we live now. Many, perhaps most people, find themselves perplexed, fearful, distressed, even sometimes overwhelmed by so much of what we see around us. The assaults on voting rights, women's rights, workers' rights, public education, gay and transgender people, immigrants, the erosion of our reproductive freedom, our freedom to read, our freedom to walk down the street, go to school, or gather without gun violence, the nastiness, the contempt for science, public service, public education, good governance, and truth, concerns about the environment, inequality, and oligarchy, the brutal attack and ongoing threats against Israel, the ordeal of the hostages, the continuing suffering and death unfolding in Gaza, as well as dismay at the current government in Israel, authoritarians like Putin abroad and their enablers and wannabes here at home, the existential need to win the upcoming elections in November. It's a lot. But if my non-gay high school classmate can take note of how change happens, so can we. I have an essay up now on US News and World Report with the grand headline, I didn't choose it, what the Freedom to Marry campaign can teach Middle East peacemakers. And here tonight, we can briefly consider how progress has been made in the past and how we can apply those lessons to our own encouragement as well as to the urgent work before us now. Here are 7 such lessons. Lesson 1, don't be afraid to set a bold goal. In 1983, when I wrote that paper as a student, nowhere in the world could same-sex couples marry. Today we can on every continent in 39 countries as of this month, including the United States. Scholars studying activism and movements in books such as This Is an Uprising now lift up the Freedom to Marry campaign as an example of what they call transformational rather than transactional change. In transactional change, advocates choose a goal they believe to be immediately attainable. Transformational change, by contrast, comes about when people aim for the change they really want, undaunted by cynicism, self-congratulatory pragmatism, or hopelessness. Set your aim on the change you want, believe in it, and convey that belief, that hope, to others so they will join and rise to action. Lesson 2, don't wallow in the problem, focus on the pathway. What makes people rally to a bold, seemingly impossible goal is not just the compelling vision, but the clarity of strategy. Strategy is the pathway that will get you there. At Freedom to Marry, we called our pathway the Roadmap to Victory, and we put it on our website. It wasn't a secret. We wanted people to see it and to join in on it. Turn off MSNBC. Stop trying to catalog all the further bad things that might happen and focus on how to move forward. When an alarm sounds and there's a fire in your kitchen, you don't sit back and debate whether it might spread to the bedroom. You fight the fire. So, for example, when people ask me whether the Republican Party and the Supreme Court it has packed with agenda-driven justices pose a threat to same-sex couples' freedom to marry, my one-word answer is vote. Lesson 3, trust that things and people can change. When I started, only 11% of Americans supported marriage for same-sex couples. Over the next 32 years, until we won, I cited lessons from what I called the scary work of winning. One such lesson was that we can't win every battle, and we will encounter painful, bitter defeats, delays, and setbacks. Yet even a loss can contribute momentum and build support, a process I called losing forward. And now, with wins, losses, 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 some wins, losses, wins, and wins, we are now at 70% support for the freedom to marry in our country. Even painful losses can propel gains, make room for change. Lesson 4, transformation requires building blocks. To build and sustain support, Freedom to Marry had to make sure that our marriage goal and strategy were accompanied by building blocks of success. Our national strategy called for state-by-state campaigns, incremental achievements, and persuasion achieved community by community, conversation by conversation. My partner in the work, Mark Solomon, our campaign director, would always say, put points on the board. That was enough sports for me, so I thought of it more as lay down those building blocks, take your steps, win an election, secure a step forward, and keep going. Lesson 5. Not everyone who is not yet with you is your foe. As mentioned, I learned during my years of activism that people underestimate their own capacity for change. At Freedom to Marry, we distinguished between true hardcore opponents and those who, while resistant, fearful, or even ignorant, we could persuade. I called those people the reachable but not yet reached. We worked hard not to push them into the camp of true opponents, but rather to give them a pathway to resolve their conflicted feelings and impulses. We didn't smear or slam the door on those not yet with us. We helped them, as President Obama put it, evolve. Lesson 6, you don't need you just need enough. Achieving change doesn't demand universal agreement. It just requires a critical mass. Excessive focus on opponents and on the extremes can subvert your own best interests. Whether in the Middle East, in Congress, on campuses, or in conversations, those who want progress must not dance to the extremist's tune or chant it. Don't let yourself be pushed into positions or rhetoric more one-sided, more dire, more unconstructive than you intend to be. Focus on the reachable and on the doable. And finally, lesson 7, change takes time. Progress comes from hope. That book, This Is an Uprising, offers up the metaphor of a massive dictator's statue towering above on imposing pillars. Advocates of change shake and shake these pillars, but nothing seems to happen until one day, one pillar comes down, and then another, and then another, and eventually the whole edifice of oppression collapses, and people then tell you, that was inevitable. I often say that we can sum up how we won the freedom to marry in 3 words: hope, clarity, and tenacity. What sustains the requisite tenacity over time and through scary stumbles is clarity of goal, clarity in your strategy, the who do I need to move to do what when in order to get to what I want, the pathway, leadership, and also being able to point to, see, and rack up those building blocks of success that validate and make up the pathway to a better future. But it all begins with hope. You must believe and convey to a critical mass the belief that we can get there, that they, too, can make a difference. When we take action, personally, individually, and collectively, we inspire others to take action. And action is what we need now. While persuasion is always important, what we need most right now to get things to a better place, whether for Israel, for gay and transgender people, for our beloved country, what we need most is political engagement. We can turn out the vote to repudiate those who are dividing Americans, who seek to distract and demoralize, who stoke despair, who aim to foist their unpopular minority views on our pluralistic people, driving our country into a ditch. We can elect federal and state representatives who will pass legislation to protect voting rights and reproductive rights and economic opportunity and racial justice and more. We can elect a president who will select judges and justices who are faithful to the Constitution, not to theocratic ideology, shadowy funders' regressive agendas, or an oligarchic wealth and power grab. We can elect leaders who will defend the rights of Americans and strengthen our democracy and work for freedom, human rights, and peace around the world. In democracies like the United States and Israel, imperfect as they are, we can get out the vote and organize and persuade and repair and build and triumph. If you will it, it is no dream, said Theodor Herzl, founder of the Zionist movement. Or as the Quran instructs, if you make it possible, it is possible. Inshallah. Shabbat Shalom.